All right. Well, good evening and thank you for attending to this webinar number 6. We are right now, as you know, in phase number 3 of the module and on the second week of phase 3. And the idea today basically is it's two main ideas. The first idea is to make sure that everything is going okay with activity number 5, which is the only activity that you have in this phase. But as we already said, it's a quite, I don't know if it's a tough activity, but it's a little bit a little bit harder activity than the ones before, and then the ones that are gonna come next week. So I wonder if you guys have had any trouble or any doubts in relation to the activities. I know that Patrick just started looking at it, but well, if you have any doubts, it would be good to comment now, um, just to make sure that it can be even useful for your mates that they are not here now. Everything
Yeah,
okay so long?
yeah, everything is very clear. I watched the last webinar, which was basically very interesting for me because then I know exactly what I had to do. That's why I also asked the question about does it have to be a facility or can I do it also for our federation?
Yeah.
Which was possible. Thanks for that. And yeah, I was already making a few how do you say that, the profiles also for myself, my own function. I would like to also do the profile in that. So yeah, I'm okay.
Great. Yes, as I said to some of the Spanish module, but they are doing the same activity as the same. I told them if it's a sports organization which doesn't have a facility, or even if it's an organization that it's in the service industry but it's not related to sports, it is also good for this activity specifically. Since what we are doing is going in depth in putting in practice a model for human resources management. The important thing is that you apply it as much real as possible. So the more information you have or access to information you have of that organization, it would be good. Whereas if you have to make up some data because you don't have access it, the less it is, the better. Yeah. So yeah, even though it's a facility management module, for this specific case, it could be an exception and no problem in analyzing, as you say, a federation or any other sort of organization. In your case, Dragomir and Kevin, as far as I'm concerned, I think you haven't submitted the activity yet, which is okay because we have plenty of time. But any doubts or any elements to consider?
Dirty, for me, it's a little bit hard to find a facility here in Moldova because it's Southeast Europe and the mentality is that not so not to be transparently and no access to CV, but I try to find. And I'd like to ask about how to describe the person from CV, the personality and so on.
Yeah, but basically, when we analyze the profile of the persons occupying the job positions, basically, obviously, maybe you don't even have the entire information, but there are three main blocks. It is the block of in relation to the, let's say, to the academic profile. So which studies or which degrees or which masters or whatever should have this person to occupy that job position. The second one would be their professional experience, the professional experience this person should have. And the third part would be something much more ambiguous, if you want, but their competencies, their attitudes, their values that this person have or should have. So in case you're analyzing a sports organization and you don't have the entire information, but that always happens. Then what you could do it is, rather than explaining or describing that personal profile, you could describe the ideal profile that this person should have for that job position. Yeah. So for instance, if we're analyzing I don't know, a sports coordinator. Probably would be interesting to have a sports degree, and maybe since he or she is coordinating a sports management master. So rather than describing what this person has or is doing, it would be interesting at least to explain which would be the theoretical profile. Yeah. So rather than going to the real profile, we could go to the theoretical profile. Yeah. So that can be a way of solving this lack of information. If in your case, Dragomir, you find hard to identify even an organization, we have different alternative options. One option would be to use the case study, the WARC case study, the Woodbridge case study that we have used in the previous phase. It's a very detailed case study, and there's a lot of information in relation to the organizational design and also to the wages and salaries that people are being paid. At the end of the document, it is over there explained. So an alternative, which is not the best option, obviously, but in case you get blocked and you cannot move forward, you can use the information on that case study to develop the activity. Or even, as a third option, it could be to use a sports organization which is present in all media. Yeah, for instance, I don't know, any Premier League football club, or Football Club Barcelona, or Real Madrid, or any professional sports club that you may have. You may find a lot of information on the web. Obviously, you won't have the description of the theoretical or the real profiles of the professionals occupying those job positions. But as I said, all the information you cannot find, you just suggest which would be the ideal profile of that person occupying that job position. Yeah. It shouldn't be that complicated to identify the organizational chart and the design of the structure of human resources of the organization. So it would be easy to identify the job positions. Probably will be much harder to identify the persons occupying that job position. But in this case, you do it from the theoretical point of view, and then you apply the post matrix. That's not the best option, but obviously I understand that it's not easy to do this activity depending on where you are, definitely. Okay, and Kevin, so far so good?
Yes, yeah, everything's good. I as well. I really like the webinars that you've been doing. They've been great to.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to, everyone's moving at different schedules and different time zones and all that. So it's always good to go in there and just kind of take the 40-minute block and just listen to it. So that's been really helpful. And then combining that with all the readings, which have been great. The one thing you just said it I think 5 times in what you were just talking, but it really jumped out at me is just looking at the positions from what people might have signed up for in that particular role, and then what that company wants that role to become. And I feel like from my experience, those two have kind of merged together, and the company always just demands more and more and more and more, but there's never a performance review or a relook at that particular position to see, should we change this role? It just kind of, people get stuck in roles and they just continue to go. And it just becomes very demanding. So I really liked how it's structured in this case of saying, this is what this particular role is, but also this is what we would like this role to become in the future.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. If not this evolution, it generates a gap, and this gap at the end of the day affects the strategization. So you may have an excellent strategic plan for the next 4 coming or 5 coming years for the organization, but at the end of the day, since we are a service industry based company, at the end of the day, if people is not aligned, it generates a gap, and yeah, paper is very nice, but then nothing happens in real. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Okay, good. So if it's okay with you, we'll go to the second half of this webinar. And here, what we're gonna do, it is I'm gonna explain how a marketing director of a professional sports club of the Primera División in La Liga, in the Spanish league. Yeah, so it's a professional club. How this marketing director understands the structure of the marketing of the club, but the first at the beginning, we're gonna explain a little bit the organization and the areas that they understand the club, a professional football club, should have anywhere in any league, in the professional leagues in Europe. But secondly, we will focus on how the marketing area is looking at filling the stadium. Yeah. So what I'm gonna show you now, it is I'm gonna share a screen with you. It is a real case of and a real situation from last year in a professional football club in Spain, which is concerned of filling up the stadium every match day. Yeah. Taking into account, as you know, that in Spain, in England, in Germany, in France today, income is not basically generated by the people attending to the stadium, but it's generated by TV rights and so on. Yeah. So even though this is not a primary necessity in terms of the feasibility of the football club, obviously they look forward to fill the stadium for other many reasons, as we will see now. Yeah. The challenge for you it is that let's see if even though you're not from Spain, but you may know probably some of the teams participating in the Premier in the first league in Spain. If you can take a chance of guessing which would be the club that we are analyzing now. Yeah, I can tell you that it's not Barça, Real Madrid, or Atletico de Madrid, because these three clubs, whether we like it or not, they don't have many problems in filling up the field, the stadium, because even though they have lots of tourists, they also have a lot of tourism because it's a big city. So they have not that problem. Yeah. So apart from these three, that they are the top three in the last years in Spain, let's see if we can guess which is the football club we're talking about. Yeah. Just to make you feel better, we did the same in the Spanish module, and they were not able to take the guess. So they didn't guess the club. So no pressure on that, definitely. But let me share the screen with you. Just a minute. And now you should be seeing my screen, and we'll go. Can you see my screen now? Yeah, I guess.
Yes, properly.
Okay. All right. So these are the areas. This is not the organizational structure, but these are the areas that professional football club, at least in Spain, and I would say all Europe, should take into account from the marketing perspective. Yeah. So as you can see here, we can see an area of operational marketing, an area of publicity, communication, press, institutional relationships and protocol, and obviously sponsorship, and also this initial element of public development. Yeah, with all the different sub elements that they are in all these 7 items. Let me make you a question. This is, as I said, this is not an organizational structure where we have a marketing director and then we have kind of these 7 sub-directors, obviously, because that would be probably too big. So if I ask you how would you join these blocks to generate 2, 3, 4 areas in a football club? Which blocks would you join to put them together? That's an open question to you. So taking into account these 7 areas, which were the blocks that you would you believe you could join together to generate a job position?
Don't be shy.
The marketing and sponsorship.
Sponsorship with, sorry?
With the operational marketing and maybe communication.
Okay.
I'd say communication and publicity too.
Publicity with operational marketing.
No, publicity with communication.
Publicity and communication together. Okay, and press?
Press, communication, and the first one.
One of the things that this marketing director told me, it is that probably in all professional football clubs, press and communication, usually they go really linked together, because anything that happens, any incident or any event that happens in the club, since they have a very important mediatic impact, press goes behind automatically. So it is very important to to have complete communication in this case, or complete link between what is the press and what is communication. And usually this means that there's a person in charge of both areas of the club. Yeah.
For me personally, if I would take a guess, according to my experience working with some smaller clubs, with some bigger clubs, and doing my PhD in football, related with football, I would definitely say that there are right now, nowadays in the football clubs, two main areas within the marketing department. One area is commercial, so everything what is to be monetized, everything what the clubs could sell on, that's one area. And the second one is communication, and often they just put it together with brand. So it's like everything what is related with communication and with brand, it's like the second area. And the new trend might be that the clubs are still working more and more towards having like a third area, which is more related on the fan, on the consumer. So more related with fan engagement. So it's like, even though it's definitely aligned with the previous two areas, but they are still dedicating more and more resources to have someone or a small department of people who could dedicate directly to the fans and work on the way how to monetize on the fans, because that was something like before. The clubs were only focusing on match day, so there were like 3-4 games per month that the clubs were playing at home. And that was the main point for all of the clubs. Nowadays, they are trying to find ways how to monetize on the fans on non-match day. So it's like, look for ways how we could maybe, first of all, find the fans, retain them, and then monetize on them. So it's like, and it's not only match day. It's actually everything that is related with non-match day. So it's like all the days that there is nothing at the game, they are looking for different ways how they could get in touch with the fans, how to work with them. So it's like this would be the third and more or less new area that, within the marketing departments of the football clubs. But the basic structure, it's like everything what is commercial, so sponsorship, etc. It's like all the sales. That's one part. Second part, it's more like communication, brand, and obviously this would be in the top clubs, because if we are going to the lower level, I'm not even saying like a second or third division, but even like a smaller clubs within the first division, they would like to have this. But let's be honest, there are many times there are people who are multitasking, who are just trying to work within several of these areas, because that's how it is. So it's like this would be the ideal scenario for this club, for example, that Jordi will mention by the end of this webinar. But in many clubs, unfortunately, it doesn't work like this. So there are many people who are just selling, who are working on the activations, and even like dealing with the key sponsors, etc. So it's like all together.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. It is interesting, this area, or this idea of the fan engagement, because it comes to my mind when these multinational retail companies, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and so on, they probably, maybe it's already 20 years ago, but they started generating a job position called product manager, which was quite new, because it was cross-cut different areas. Yeah, so they touch a little bit of product, they touch a little bit of marketing, they touch a little bit of sales, and this product manager was, let's say, putting their nose in different areas, but they saw the element from the customer point of view, and maybe there could be some analogy here with this fan engagement kind of job position, because probably it's one of the coming trends in the, as you say, as you perfectly identified, coming trends in professional, not only football but in professional sport, where there's going to be a lot of job positions, basically called fan engagement or fan engagers, or however you want to call it, which means apart from the match day, how we can be much more in contact with our fans and with our society or with our community in general. And it's interesting because it's cross-cut of different, it's transversal to different areas, which is interesting. Yeah.
I think it's also nice that, sorry, Jordi, that I'm interrupting you. I think it's also nice that we are having Kevin here, because his perspective, being from the States, could be definitely different related with fan engagement and in general how the entities over there are working with the fans. Because to be honest, in Europe, it's not even close to that. So it's like if you are, for example, going to watch an NBA game or NHL game, it's more or less like obviously the on-ice product or the on-pitch product. It's important. However, yeah, the experience. That's the point, and that's actually where the clubs in Europe are trying to work right now. Offer experience. It's not only like the product that you will see on the page. It's more like everything that you will witness and you will live during the visiting the stadium. That's the reason why the clubs are building new stadiums, smart stadiums, where you will like you will be in a wave. Like it's like, wow, it's amazing. I'm just witnessing something which is completely new. I could pay with my phone. I could like the stadiums, like for example the new stadium of Lyon. The whole customer journey, it's completely different. Like it was, you are being already involved in the whole product of the football game once you are just going out from your flat or your apartment, because you are already using the metro ticket or the public transport ticket. It's already related with the club, because you are getting some discount, you are paying with your phone, you are downloading it to your phone, you are just coming to the stadium, you are not even you don't need a ticket, you will just use your phone again. You want to buy something, again, use your phone, and then all the experience you are getting throughout the game. So it's like it's gaming, it's live betting, it's whatever, all the point, all the stats, all the things that you could get, the information, the data, the stats. I mean, like nowadays, look at me, I'm just with the t-shirt of Tour de France. The analogy, it's the same. Watching Tour de France today, it's not the same like 10 years ago. You're watching the race and you are getting all the stats, all the data. You know how many kilowatts they are producing at that moment. You know the speed, you know everything. So it's like, this is actually the trend that will happen soon in European football. So you are just going to go, because the clients, the consumers, the fans that are going to the stadium, they are usually watching the game through different screens, through different optics. It's not only like what you see with your proper eyes. It's usually with your mobile phone, where you are checking all the data, all the information. You want to see how many shots they had. You want to see like what happened. Often the people are listening the whole narration of the game on the radio. So it's like more and more. So it's like it's more like the clubs will still be focusing on improve and enhance the overall experience that the people will get on the stadiums.
Definitely, I completely agree. And as Lucas says, probably in the States they are a little bit one step forward on that, but basically also the culture of the sport and the spectator sport as well, that they have it from the beginning, which is interesting, and all the structure of the franchises and so on that they are around the sport helps out to move on that direction. Obviously, it has a counterpart as well, but it's interesting. The last element of this first slide that I wanted to comment is if we look at the first column, this public development, it's very interesting. Sorry, it's very interesting to see how this marketing director of this football club suggests that from the marketing perspective, there should also be this area or should be in charge of analyzing this public development. Yeah, he was actually saying that at least in Europe, a marketing director in a sports club is basically the person right under the CEO. Yeah. So if we think in many other companies, probably if I ask you, okay, below the CEO, who would be the second person with much more responsibility in the organization? Probably most of you would say that the finance director probably is the one who's holding the dollars or the euros. So therefore, is the second person with more importance in the organization in terms of responsibility. Probably since most of the money coming into professional sport, it comes today from TV rights, and it's not managed by the club itself, but it's managed by the league or by the other, let's say, umbrella organization. Probably the finance director in sport organizations, even though they move a large amount of millions of euros or dollars, probably this public development is interesting, that is also under the, let's say, the scope of the marketing director. And therefore, this position of marketing director suggests that probably it should be the second person with highest responsibility below the CEO of the company. in sports, professional sports, which is probably different from other industries. Yeah, so it's a thought that it's quite interesting, and I would like to link this idea with the next one, which is this segmentation process that this club is doing today. Yeah, so what it says here, and now we are linking directly to fill up the facility, yeah, the stadium. Yeah, so if we're thinking that we have a big box, which is our stadium, and a part of other elements, we want that the stadium is full every match day. Okay, we'll have an audience, and this audience probably we will have 4 different main groups. Yeah, we'll have some loyal audience, which is people that goes over there almost every weekend or every time there's a game home. People who's gone there for their last 50 years and they have the habit of going and attending to the football or to any sports game. We have the groups segment, which are stakeholders, corporates, fan clubs, and even other sort of large groups that they can go to the stadium. We have the niche the niche segments, which would be some sort of social focus, which is having a lot of importance because probably the same word, the word of social says it, so that they are not looking for profitability here, but they are looking for more engagement with the community, better image of the club, and so on. We're looking at young people, and we're looking at tourists as well. And then finally, the general audience, which would be well, those that they know that there's a stadium over there, that there are some games happening, and from time to time they go, as they would go to the theater or to the cinema or to the aquatics park, but they go to the stadium to watch a game, but they don't really are, let's say, fans of that club or that team or that event. Yeah. So if I ask you to put in the shoes in the marketing manager of football, let me ask you to do it in a football professional sports club in Europe. Yeah, because maybe it's easier to localize that. Which would be the 3 or the 2, or which would be the target, the main target you would focus if you are talking about a football club that is in the medium of the table? It's not the top club. Yeah. Do you think there could be 1 or 2 segments that they would be more interesting than others from the management point of view? Could you take a guess on that? Obviously, there's not a right answer, but there are some reflections on any answer you suggest. Any ideas here?
Jordi,
Yeah,
I was just
groups,
about to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the groups definitely because there are your fans and the loyal audience is those 2 are the biggest groups. You can do a lot with it. You can communicate with it probably. So yeah, those 2 are for me the first 2 I will do some activities with. And if you want to have new audience, then of course the young people are very interesting. So yeah.
I agree. Definitely, young people is probably one of the segments that they have different, let's say, outcomes at the end of the day, because you can engage young people that obviously they will grow up and they will become senior members, for instance. But also these young people, they can bring families with them if they are quite young. At the same time, when you think about attracting young people, maybe you go to amateur football clubs in the area of influence that obviously they are not playing at the first division. So if they want to see a professional first division game, they have to come to my stadium. So there are many different perspectives that take into account this segment of young people, definitely. Mm-hmm. Any other ideas?
Also, so awake, interesting, and sleeping. This left part.
Mm-hmm.
We should to be very interesting because these are clients that we can attract, and fans also. And I think this is the problematic fans that we should to attract in the club.
Definitely, and it should be quite easy at least to put some objective data on that. Yeah. So for instance, if loyal audience goes, I don't know, 70% of the home games to the stadium, probably awake general audience goes to 2 or 3 games throughout the season or 4. And our target for next year, for next coming season, should be that sleeping at least go. The sleeping target go at least 1 or 2 times, and they become awake at the end of the season. Yeah, because as you can imagine, general audience, it's a much bigger market share that when we're talking about loyal audience, that they go to our club because they feel the colors, because they are identified with our club, and so on. Yeah. And another very important thing, at least in Spain, as you know, if you are not Barca, Real Madrid, or Atletico de Madrid, probably you don't win many games throughout the league. So this loyal audience also is quite depending on the results of the team. Yeah. So if the team is winning, they are going to be very happy and they're going to go to attend to the stadium. But if the team is losing, they're going to stay at home and watch it on TV. So since we are managers and we are managing emotions and we're managing professional sport, we cannot only depend on the team that if they win or not, because if not, we are not going to be really professional managers. So we have to have that. Obviously, winning always helps, obviously, in sport, but at the same time, we have to have other strategies just in case the team is not performing as good as they should. Yeah. So that's why it is interesting to diversify a little bit this segmentation process in different subsegments. Any other ideas, Lucas?
I fully agree with you. Jordi, because from the marketing perspective, it's always important to know your segment in order to know it as much as possible. Because the more information you gather, the more information you have, the easier for you it's to create and tailor-made the future campaigns and marketing strategies. It's, for example, obviously this is great to have so many different groups. For me personally, and from my personal experience, I would always reduce it to 4 main groups, like it is here more or less explained. And it is based on one project I've seen once, which was the English Football Association, when they were analyzing their main targets. Like they were trying to put a price tag on each target group they defined. And what they were doing, and I think it's very important and it's very interesting, because they decided that from more or less 27 million England fans, which is almost like 58% of adult population, there are 4 different types of followers. So the first group, which was one of the biggest groups, was, they call it like a big eventer. So just people who are watching or following the national team only when there is a World Cup or European Cup, and that's it. They are not spending money, they are not going to the games, they are not buying merchandising, they are just well, like always, there is a big game, there is like, let's say, quarterfinal of the World Cup. Wow, I'm interested. So that would be like more or less almost more than 9 million people in UK who are just big eventers. Then they define another group, which they call follower, which is more or less like the profile. Imagine a dad, like typical father. That would be the one who is just watching the games in the telly. The member of this group, they are not going to watch the games into the stadium. They are not spending that much money on the merchandising. If the game is on the pay TV, they're not going to pay for it. They would rather go to the bar to watch it with some friends, and that's it. The next group, it's more interesting because they call it a fan. Definitely younger one, male, between 18 and 35 years old, who is at least buying some kind of merchandising, at least the national team jersey. They are going to the games when the games are played in their city, and usually they're following the national team, the information. The last group, the smallest group that they defined, it's called hardcore. I'm not saying they're ultras, but those are the fans who are buying everything. So if there is some kind of like a sports suit or whatever with the logo, they're going to buy it. It's official. They just they want to buy it. they're traveling with the team. So if they're playing in Russia, they don't care. They will just travel. They will go there. They will enjoy, and they will sing the God Save the Queen because they like it. So the point is that with these 4 groups, what they try to do, they try to put a price tag on each of them. How much do they spend per year? Obviously, it's an estimation. But if we are going to the big eventer, they are spending more or less like £83 per year. If we are going to the one which was the follower, they're spending like £86 per year, which is almost next to nothing. But still, if you multiply it with so many people, there are so many members of this group that they define, it could be interesting. The one number which was really interesting was the fan, which was the 3rd group I mentioned, because they're already spending like £160. They're buying the merchandising, and it's something that they could definitely work with. And even though the last group, the hardcore group, that was the smallest one, but they are still spending like almost £600 per year because they're traveling, they're going to the games, they're always with the team. So it's like it's very important to have to have at least some kind of estimations, so you could tailor-make the campaigns, you could prepare it based on the information you gather about your different segments and your different target groups. I understand that the example of, let's say, national association is not the same as a football club, because like national team is playing not that many games per year, so it's not the same. But the clubs definitely need to go deep, find as much information as possible about their fans, because before that was like a common thing. Many clubs were just comparing, like, I'm having that many million followers on Facebook. The point is, do you know something about them? Do you know where they come from? Do you know who they are? Do you know how you could tackle them down and get some, well, I'm not saying exactly money, but at least get them to sign for something, so you could either send some newsletters or put them into their CRM system, whatever. So it's like, the more information you have, the better for you, and the better for you as a director to tailor-make the campaigns for the future.
Definitely, and probably let's say this relationship with fans, it's being undervalued in the last years, at least in Europe, in the main leagues, football leagues in Europe. Probably with exception maybe in Germany, that even the law has let's say supported the idea of having part of the ownership of the club on the hands of the members, of the fans, of the members of the club. But in the other countries, these large organizations, they have become companies. They are at the share stock exchange, and they really, since the money comes from the TV rights and from communication, media communication, they have kind of let's say undervalued the big box they have, the stadium and the attendance. But well, Lucas is much more aware of that. But there are some studies that they show that this is not sustainable over time. So the large amount of millions that the media and the communication companies are bringing into sport, and especially into football, this is not sustainable over time. So sooner or later it will come to a time that apart from obviously the TV rights money coming into, there needs to be a lot of other sources of income that maybe 20 years ago they were very important, such as attendance to the stadium, and they will come back and become important again. And even such a global organization like the International Olympic Committee is working on that already, trying to understand that they don't have facilities, obviously, but they have too much dependence on TV rights for the winter and summer Olympic Games, and they have started on a strategy of getting more involved with the society, which would be the equivalent of a community or a professional sports club in a specific city or location. So there has to be some sort of management rethinking in terms of to guarantee sustainability in professional sport, and especially football, apart from income being generated by TV rights and media. There has to be other sources of income, and definitely fan engagement, attendance to the stadium, levels of expenditure of our fans or of our people that is interested in our club. That's going to be very, very important. And here it is probably where this segmentation process makes much more sense. And gets much more given a lot of value to it. Yeah. Any other reflections on relation to this process?
Jordi, I'm just curious. The one
Sure.
that jumps out to me the most here is the one right in the center on the bottom, young. But
yeah,
just to ask you about that further is what's obviously huge in the U.S. and you guys could speak to it about it over there. But millennials in general and the age group for millennials it's not perfectly defined, but you know, there's now people break the millennial group up into young millennials, old millennials. So I'm just curious, when this here says young, are you talking about little children, or are you would millennials fall into that category? Because I personally would have that in its own group and it to be a priority.
I agree that this is today too white or too white. Yeah, probably here when because I got that from an explanation of this marketing director. He was referring basically to millennials. So this means people that they are actually today probably linked to football from an amateur point of view, obviously. So they play football, or they are really keen on watching football games because that's the sport they like to. Well, they if they want to see a professional or a high standard football game, obviously they have to go to the stadium, and that would be the idea of young. Not so it's more young than children, probably. Yeah. So but having said that, as you say, probably between a young and an old millennial, or maybe a teenager that is already, let's say, still linked to the family, but really taking decisions by his own or by her own, it's also a very interesting element here. So yeah, definitely that's one point. Another point important here, it is that maybe not too much in the States because it's much more traditional over there, but in Europe, female football is pushing hard very importantly. So one question that I made to the marketing director is how come there was not a segment for, let's say, female football followers, to put it in a way, or fans. And he told me that they are not thinking, they haven't identified still that segment. So this means that people who watch and who attends the female football today still, they are basically the same that they are attending to the male football, which is, at least is what he told me. I don't know if it's arguable or not, but it's interesting point of view. But probably in the future, this is going to be an evolution. That's going to be an evolution, and probably there's going to be here a way of segmentating differently for female football than for male football, because there are other elements behind female football that probably we cannot find in terms of in male football. Yeah, so we will go to Football Club Barcelona Stadium, and maybe people just want to go there to see live Messi or live these cracks of football. Whereas that's, at least today or in the next coming years, that's not going to happen in female football, because the level of presence and mediatic impact that they have, it's not that big. Probably, as I say, different in the States, because female soccer is very important, and they have a lot of exposition in media, but not that much in Europe yet. Yeah. Okay, so we're moving on a little bit, and to finalize this idea and these comments, let me go to the last slide that I can show you right now, which is this idea of online marketing. Yeah, which that makes a lot of sense in many areas and in many ideas. But I would agree that in many industries today, nowadays, online marketing and offline marketing, they have merged, and it's very difficult to identify what is online and what is offline. Well, not difficult, but it's difficult to set strategies different from the managerial point of view, which is on and which is offline. No? When we're talking about a stadium, football stadium, a facility, this is still, let's say, interesting, because obviously if I live 2,000 kilometers away from the stadium, whether I'm really a fan of that club, I cannot travel every weekend or every 2 weeks to see the home games over there. So this idea of offline and online when we talk about the physical facility, it's still very important. It's still vision. So even though the trends are joining and merging online and offline marketing, when we talk about a sports facility, this probably should be kept separately a little bit, at least until the moment. As Lucas said at the beginning, when this idea of the fan engagement, even job position, probably this is a mixture of both online and offline. But to fill up a sports facility, in my opinion, that's probably very personal, but in my opinion, we have to separate which is online and which is offline, just to make sure that we can optimize both both areas in order to achieve the objective, which is to fill the stadium. Yeah. So here we have different elements, nothing much new probably for all of you, of which should be the elements that a sports club should take into account when we're talking about online marketing. Yeah. So we have discussed that online marketing will serve to the corporate image and also to sales, to commercial functions and objectives. And there are many elements that online marketing should take into account when it comes into the management of this sports facility. But that's quite descriptive. It's not very complicated. I don't know if you have any insights or any inputs on that.
It's very important to also recognize that the top clubs, the big clubs, they are fully aware that they could use their facility in limited days, limited time. Therefore, they are trying to use all the channels, online and offline, to promote it and to try to attract the people and the tourists and the visitors in every single day per year. So, for example, if we are speaking about Barça, the Museum of FC Barcelona, it's the most visited museum in the whole Catalonia. We are speaking about in Barcelona, there are many museums, art museums, there are many like Sagrada Familia, so we have many monuments to visit. However, the most visited part of Barcelona, it's actually the Museum at Camp Nou. So it's like, that's one thing that the clubs are trying to do, to attract people, not only on the match day, but attract them permanently, constantly. So it's like, even though you are coming on a not match day, you could definitely come here, and it means that you will directly spend money because you will pay for the visit. And obviously, you will directly visit the shop, which is next to the museum, which means buy some merchandising, which means again money for the big piggy bank, which is very important for the clubs. So it's like that was what was Jordi mentioning. It's very important to understand that the clubs are trying to engage with the fans, no matter how. And for example, it's very common for clubs in UK. They are having diehard fans in all parts of Asia, even though the fans have never visited the club or the stadium, or have never seen the club playing a live game. So, for example, there are many students that we are having from different Asian countries who are very big fans of, let's say, Liverpool, Manchester United. They never had a chance to go there to watch them play, but they're consuming. They're buying merchandising. They are subscribing to different platforms. They are following the clubs. They are following the social media. So it's like, that's amazing power that the clubs are getting through different online and offline promotions that they are doing.
Definitely. Okay, so well, the idea today was to discuss a little bit about sports facility in the professional sport. Next phase number 4 and the last one, as you will see, we will talk and discuss about a case study of Athletic Club Bilbao, which is, as you know, football, a very special club in Spain, because they have no people from abroad, and well, you'll see the real situation over there, and it's a very good case study in terms of the linking between the community and the team. So we will go through that, and the case study also, and the activity is much easier than the one that you're facing now. And finally, there's going to be a kind of a short exam. So before we explain a little bit that it's going to be next week, but maybe Lucas will add something now. I would like you to take a guess, if you could take a guess of the club that we have been discussing in terms of marketing right now. Could you try to guess which club in the Primera Liga, de Primera División in Spain is?
Eibar.
You said Eibar?
Eibar.
Eibar.
Okay, more guesses?
More guesses, Patrick.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the question about the fans.
No, which club we were discussing?
Sorry, again.
Which club?
When we saw this marketing.
Is it a Spanish team?
Yeah, it's a Spanish team. It's a Spanish team from first division. So it's like, and it's not the top 3 club. So it's like I would say it's not even Seville. So it's like the top 4 clubs like Barça, Real Madrid, Atletico, and Seville. It's not this club. It's like a mid-table club. So Dragomir already said Eibar. Okay, you are saying Betis, and you, Kevin?
I'll take a wild guess and just say Valencia.
Okay.
Well, you have actually identified 3 clubs that they are not any of these, but they are quite similar to this basically, because this is for Real Club Deportivo Español, which as you know is the, I wouldn't say like that, but it's the second team in the city of Barcelona after Football Club Barcelona. And maybe you don't know that, but in the recent years they have built a very large stadium, 40,000 capacity, and it's 10 minutes away from the city. It's in a city 10 minutes away. So they are really putting a lot of effort in filling up the stadium and to make sure that the fans have an experience when they go over there. To be honest, it's a magnificent stadium because it's being built with the lived experience of watching a football game. Another thing is if the game is good or not in terms of quality and in terms of let's say emotions. But the stadium itself, it's magnificent, and it's really highly recommendable to visit it if you are around in Barcelona, because which is the facility. It's amazing. It's a very, very nice facility.
Well, there are some emotions when Barça is playing there. When they are playing it at home against Barça, there are many emotions. Trust me.
Oh, definitely. That's the derby. Yeah. So, well, guys, thank you for being here. We're gonna set a last webinar next week. Probably it's gonna be on Tuesday, and but I'll email you and I'll give you a message in due time. And that's going to be next one, the last webinar. But I don't know, Lucas, if you want to explain a bit how are we going to open the module and so on the page.
Just a brief information, because unfortunately I won't be able to participate on the next one, even though I would love to, because the case about Athletic Bilbao, it's a wonderful one and I love it. But I will be on my holidays. So next week I will be non-existing. I will completely disappear. But one of the reasons for this, I mean, we've been already receiving some petitions from some students that they would like to go on holidays a little bit earlier, because officially the course will finish on 4th of August. And the idea was to open the new phase on Sunday, but it's actually already open. So for those of you that want to maybe just go ahead a little bit faster, no worries about that. You have the whole phase 4 already open. You have access to all the materials, all the activities, and as Jordi said, the last exam, which is like a 50-minute activity, it will take only 50 minutes. So and it's limited. So once the time is over, you cannot. It will be just sent. It will be open. Usually it's open the last 3 days of the course. But for this edition, we opened it. It will be opened on 27th of July until 4th of August. So those of you will have like more than 1 week to finish it. So those of you that want to finish a little bit earlier, feel free to do it. It's not difficult. It's quite simple one. It's all related with the content that we've been going through the whole module. And I would only recommend one thing. Sometimes the virtual campus could be tricky, and sometimes could happen that you are working on the exam, and as you are not loading new pages for 50 minutes, the virtual campus could just disconnect. So I would definitely suggest you to use another additional document, being in the notes or Word document, whatever you want, just copy and paste the answers over there, because if something like this happened, that the virtual campus will disconnect, you will have at least the replies on additional piece of paper that could be sent, and we will accept it.
Yeah, I'll remind you all these in the next webinar, because that's important, because we've had some bad experiences in the previous modules, and therefore I will remind this important idea that Lucas is saying. Yeah. So, well, basically that's it. I hope you have enjoyed, and as I said, next phase activities are much simpler and with less volume of hours to dedicate. And I'm sure you will enjoy the Atlético Club de Bilbao case study, because it's quite brief but very goes to the point and very interesting in some data that they are giving over there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have already available at the campus, and feel free to contact me if you have any doubts or any comments you would like to do before you start the activities. Yeah.
All right.
So
it was a pleasure to have you.
And Lucas, have a great holidays. You deserve them. And for those that we are not lucky, we'll see you next week. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All the best.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks. Ciao.